Hey y'all, it's Stephen Van Kampen-Lewis, and today I want to do a quick update on the Catasetums that are in the tent, and I also have two that are blooming, so I will show y'all those, and then we'll go over to the grow tent to see sort of a mid-season, mid-dormant season, I guess, update on how everybody's doing, any actions that I might take to remedy some bad situations. We'll look at some healthy plants as well, and see what I'm going to do, and maybe you can apply that to your particular dormant period plants. But let's check out these blooming catasetums. I say catasetums just sort of broadly, but one's a cloacia, one's a catasetum, and it's always great to get blooms this time of year, especially since they're not only colorful and really cool to look at, they're very fragrant as well. All right, so the first one is one of my favorites. This is Fong Sing. And as many of you know, I got this from William Green many years ago. I think this one just got too big for his collection, and he didn't want it anymore. So he gifted it to me, and I have been eternally grateful ever since. And this is one of my favorites. As you can see why, the color on this is absolutely outstanding. The flowers are just monstrous, at least for this species, or it's not a species, it's a hybrid, but for this Catasetum group, the plants are large as well, and it blooms probably 2 or 3, or even 4 sometimes times per year. No, I'll say that it's only gone 3 times per year. Usually it's pretty seasonal, and then it only blooms in the late fall. But here we are in mid-January, and this is the first time that I've gotten a January bloom from it. But I mean, you can just see the sort of intensity of the color. Just this intense red, fire engine red, maybe getting into the burgundy spectrum there, and then the frills on the lip here, and then of course just the absolutely crystal white, I call them fangs, but the triggers here, and then the pollinia is just a fantastic plant. And not only is the plant and the flowers big, but so are the pollinia. I had this one, it bumped into the wall, unfortunately, so you can see normally, so that's the sheath on top, the anther cap, I guess you could say, and then a bee will come along, and those triggers will smack it, and then it'll be flying around with these pollinia hanging off the back, and then we'll go and, of course, find a female flower, and then fertilize that female flower. And these pollinia, once they stick on, they're pretty hard to get off. It's still wet now, but here's a better image. Big pollinia, big flowers, big plant, and just super amazing color. If you ever get a chance to get one of these Catasetum Fong Sings, I really encourage you to do so if you have the space. And then just the waxiness of the flowers. I mean, it's like hard plastic. Just amazing. Definitely a high quality plant. Oh, and this one is awarded, but on female flowers. So next year, or I guess I should say later this year, when it blooms again, I want to have, hopefully it'll time itself correctly so that I can take it for judging and get the male flowers awarded, so that I can have both female flowers and male flowers awarded on the same plant, which would be really cool and really unusual. It doesn't happen a lot, as you can imagine. So the next one that I want to show is Grace Dunn. And if you look online, there's a lot of Grace Dunns blooming right now, and some of the similar plants. Of course, this is Varsavitsii and Rosea, mixed and matched at least once. I can't remember. I think it's Rebecca Northern back on one of those parents. So Rebecca Northern is blooming, and it's not Rebecca Northern, it's Rebecca Northern. And then, of course, Grace Dunn is a cross of Rebecca Northern back onto one of the parents. And it's just such a great seasonal bloomer. I get these blooms every year. And, I'm actually noticing that I wonder if these blooms were in a little bit of a darker part of the tent, because you can see that some of these here are more pink, and then these are very green. And then actually you see some of the pinkness here on the newer open flowers. So I'm going to zoom in real quick on these green ones, and you can see that intensely frilly lip. Of course, this one is pretty cupped. Not all of them are this cupped, but a lot of them are. And then those stripes in the lip are really really cool to look at, especially when you look deep in the throat there. They get really dark. And then that frilly lip. And then, of course, if you look at more of the pink ones, you can see there's a lot more color and an intensely fragrant species. So whenever I open the tent, or even sometimes when I just walk into the garage with the tent, I can smell this sort of anise or anise, not sure how you pronounce it, A-N-I-S-E scent, that it's sort of a spicy cinnamon scent, but mixed with pine. And it's really pleasant. I really enjoy it. And for those of you that watch William Green, I think he has Grace Dunn, but he certainly has Rebecca Northern and at least one of the parents, maybe Rosea. And they're kind of blooming in this time period as well. His go a little earlier than mine for some reason. Let's see if I can get a close-in shot of that lip. Is it going to work? It is. So I'm going to hold this as steady as possible with the wind blowing. And you can see the frills there. All right, let's zoom out so nobody gets sick. And this is another one that's really worthwhile to have in your collection. As you can see, it puts out a lot of spikes. I've got another one on the back side that is mostly bud still. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 spikes, all coming from 2 bulbs. And I think this is a decently grown plant. A really, really well-grown plant would have put out maybe 4 spikes from each bulb. So I'm going to have to up my game next year. I'm probably going to repot it. I think this media is starting to break down. It's been there for probably 3 years. So these guys don't mind sort of broken down, not so good media, but there is a point at which they say they've had enough. And I think this one has had enough. So, but let's go look at the ones in the tent. Okay, so my 2 tents are here. The doors are open. And let's take a quick look. There's really only 2 plants in here worth sort of mentioning. Most of my Catasetums look like this, where they've got their bulbs just hanging out, doing nothing, which is typical for dormancy. You can see these back bulbs are a little more shriveled. So I might give this one a little bit of a little sip of water today when I water the rest of the plants. This one's a little shriveled as well, so I'll give that one a little sip as well. Let's see if we can fatten those up a bit. That one back there is the most shriveled. And so I might actually give that one a pretty good soak and then let it drain. And you can see one of the bulbs, that brown one there, has been consumed by the plant. And I could probably just rip it off right now if I wanted, but it's in the back. And then the other bulbs are kind of shriveled, the long, skinny, older back bulbs. And even the newer ones are a little skinnier than I'd like. So I'm going to definitely give that one a good soak here. And then I'll dump out the water from the water well. I think that one's going to be another candidate for new media and maybe even a new pot in the spring. Who knows? We'll see. There's the Cycnices right there, Coopery, just hanging out. They're giving that one a little sip every now and then. And then this Catasetum lucis, which is the big one here. Actually, let me get below the light. You can see it's already putting out a new growth. So that's my first new growth of the season. which is typical for that particular species. They're one of the earlier ones that wakes up. And it's also one that often blooms on the new growth. So it looks like this one's about to walk out of the pot. So I'll give this one a larger pot with new media as well. And then on this side, I have two denticulatums. This one is looking more shriveled than I like, so I'm going to inspect that one after I put the camera down. And then this one is doing okay. It is absorbing its older back bulb there. This is Catasetum nomus, and you can see it's very skinny. And so I'm actually going to pull it. I've actually been watering this one semi-regularly, and I think what happened is this one grew too far up on the bulb on the plant, and its new roots didn't really get a chance to get a good foothold in the media, and they just kind of aborted in the heat. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to pull it out of this pot, and then I'm going to wrap these new roots, which are not very large, in some sort of media, maybe sphagnum, maybe just a wet paper cloth, and just let it sit there for a couple days and absorb water for the back bulbs here. So it's absorbing this back bulb. This newest back bulb looks terrible. And then these older ones are not looking great either. So I think there's enough reserves to keep it going. But when it starts growing in the spring, I worry that it doesn't have enough nutrient reserves to really get going and get a good set of new roots out before the plant sort of runs out of extra energy. Another large plant down there doing nicely with an unbloomed, near blooming size plant behind it. Oh no, I'm sorry, that's a Galleandra. That one bloomed for me a couple times this year. And then these ones are doing well. I see a shriveled bulb on this one. I think this is another Nomus, so I might give that one a quick sip. And that's about it. So hopefully most of your Catasetum types look more like this with only a little bit of shriveling and not so much like this. When they get like this and they're still fast asleep, that means you need to, it's a call to action. You got to do something. Something bad is going on and it needs to be fixed. Whereas if, there's a little bit of shriveling, that's okay. Maybe water in 2 or 3 weeks, or right now, whenever it's going to be warm and dry off fairly quickly. Anyway, that's it. Hope you all are having a great weekend.